Yo, what's good? Big Z here, and today I'm going to show you guys how I made my new single, Lay It Down. Down. Shout out to Arnell on the vocals. I'll link all of his stuff below if you want to check him out. I'll also put a link down there to stream the track on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you use. But anyway, let's get into the track. So this is the main project where I produced everything. I actually mixed it in a different project and I processed the vocals in another project, but I'll just show you this one for now, and maybe I'll get into some of the vocal processing later. So I'll just start at the beginning and go through, show you how I made all the sounds, and show you some of the effects and tricks I used in the track as well. So to start things off, we have this funky organ sound. So this organ sound is just from Contact. I'll take all the effects off so you can hear the raw sound. So it's called Mellotron organ. It just comes with the Contact factory library. Here's what it sounds like. Sounds really cool. I forget if I tweaked around with any of these settings down here, but it doesn't matter. I just added some ozone imager to widen it up. Then I've got some EQ on there rolling off the high end. Then I'm automating this filter throughout the build-up just to build up the energy here. Another thing I did to build up the energy was add this saw pad layer in the background. It just fills out that build really nicely. So that sound is just from Serum. It's a simple saw pad sound. I know it says sine pad right here. I started with my classic sine pad preset and just changed it to a saw wave. But yeah, it's a really simple sound, 7 voices unison, some detune. Just got some multi-band compression on there and this filter on there as well. Also, to fill out the build up a little bit more, I added this violin drone layer.
Like an ocean feels the waves move. Got that fire in your eyes now, baby. Freaky body, got me wanting you. Let's turn it down. I know you're a freak. Bring that body close.
So I wanted to keep the beginning of the song super simple and then just build up upon that throughout the song. That's why when it drops the first time, it's just the kick, snare, bass, and vocals. I wanted to keep it really simple just to introduce those vocals and that bass line. So the bass at first is just 2 different layers. Here's the main bass sound. And this is just from a Logic stock synth called ES2. And I just used a preset called Hollow Bass in there. I don't think I changed it at all. I just added some external effects to make it sound a little bit better in the mix. Like without the external effects, here's what it sounds like. Then with the effects. I just added the CLA bass plugin to add some compression and chorus to it. Then I have this EQ on there, making room for the sub bass. Then I have this multi-band transient designer just to make the high-end attack pop out a bit more. Then I sent it to a reverb bus here. Then beneath that, I have this simple sub bass sound. I spent my whole last video that I came out with talking about this, but it's just a super simple sub sound, just to beef up the low end so I can mix it in however I wanted it. So it's just an analog BD sine wave. Then in the effects section, I'm adding some multi-band compression, a ton of tube distortion all the way up, and then this filter on there, so nothing above like 140 hertz comes out, so it's just the sub frequencies.
Don't make a sound, follow me lead.
I love this really hard-hitting kick and snare. These are actually in my new sample pack that's also linked down below. But I love these sounds. So at first I just started with the kick and the snare. Then I added a ton of these hand claps down here to make it sound like a natural hand clap layer. So if I just solo the claps, they just add a lot of energy and width to that snare that wouldn't be there if it was just the snare playing. As for the other drums to come in, I just have a few different percussion elements, little shaker loops come in. Like when the full drop is playing, here's how all the drums sound by themselves. I really tried to make the percussion groove match what was going on with the synths and the leads and everything else in the track, so everyone would sit together nice and cohesively. So at the end of the first drop here, we have every element playing at once. So if we wanted to break them into sections, we would have the basses. Then we have the chords up here. Then we have these two stab layers. And then we have the lead vocal chops. So I added in one more bass layer in this last section. This layer just adds a lot of character to the overall bass. So in oscillator A, I have this saw wave down an octave, just one voice of unison. Oscillator B, I have this anti-stasis wave right here with 4 voices of unison, and a little bit of detune just to widen it up on there. Then I just have this envelope down here modulating the cutoff of the filter. In the effects section, just some pretty standard effects on there. I added some phaser just to make it sound a little funkier. In this layer, I just have everything below like 400 hertz being cut off because it just complements the other bass layers really nicely. You can see without it, the track is missing a lot of energy. Now let's talk about the chords here. There's really 2 main chord sounds here. So first off, we have this M1 piano up here. To make it super short, I've brought the release and sustain all the way down over here. And then this layer was sounding super thin on its own, and that's why I added this saw chord layer. So this is just a simple sound in Serum. It's this evol sweep wave with 7 voices unison, a little bit of detune. Then layered with that is a saw wave, an octave above it. But it's a pretty simple sound. Here's the envelope that's modulating the low pass filter. In the effects section, I just have some dimension expander and some multiband compression on there. And externally, I'm just adding some reverb and this EQ right here. So it's a pretty simple sound. And then the reverse chord you're hearing is that same exact sound. And how I did that reverse was just use that same exact Serum patch, and then I took LFO2 right here to modulate the filter. So it's ramping up every time a note is played. And to make it sound super funky, I'm using LFO1 here to modulate this fine pitch so it moves around in pitch when you play it. So far we've got the drums, the bass, and the chords. I felt like it was still missing a lot of energy, and that's why I added these brass stabs down here. So I've definitely used these sounds in other songs before. So this first layer is just the classic brass sound that you're hearing the most of. And that's just a Nexus preset called Big Brass. So without the effects. Then with the effects. All the effects are there just to help it sit in the mix a little bit better. I compressed it and then used some different EQs just to roll off the high end and not make it as obnoxious sounding. Then underneath that, to fill it out a little bit, I have this deep stab layer. it complements that brass layer really well. So this is a simple serum sound. It's basically just a saw wave with 7 voices unison and some detune on there. Here's the envelope that I have modulating the filter in the effects section. But in the effects section, it's just a multi-band compressor and this tube distortion cranked all the way up. So it's a pretty simple sound, but it sounds really cool. So the last part of the drop would be the leads right here. So I try to make these sound as funky as possible, and I'll show you how I did that. So originally I got this loop from Splice that sounds like this without the effects I put on it. So I chopped up that loop, and here's what it sounded like after I chopped it up. So then after I added the effects, it sounds like this. So first I'm just adding some compression with this Waves R compressor, but then the real magic is happening with this manipulator plugin. I was messing around with some of the presets in here that are really cool, and I found this one called Bot Sweep that I was messing around with, and I got it to sound really cool using this preset. It just sounds a lot more robotic and funky with that effect on there. So after that, I'm just adding some OTT on there, and then I'm adding an EQ, and then I'm sending it to a reverb bus, and I'm sending it to a delay bus as well, just to give it some space in the mix. So I felt like this layer wasn't wide enough on its own, so I added a second layer. Where I changed the harmonics a little bit to make it sound different with this manipulator plugin. I also added Soundtoys Micro Shift on there, just to move it to the sides of the mix and increase the stereo imaging on there. Then I added this FabFilter Saturn plugin to add some saturation. Just to make it really bright sounding. And then I have this EQ at the end cutting off everything below like 600 Hertz to make room for that main lead layer. Then for the second half of the song, I just use all the sounds I already showed you just to break it down a little bit and then build up the tension again before the second drop. But there's really nothing new in terms of sound design or any of the sounds I use in the second half of the song as opposed to the first half. So let me show you real quick how I process these vocals. So here's the project that I processed the vocals in before I bounced the acapella and then used it in the other project where I mixed the whole track. As you can see, Miles sent me a bunch of different harmonies and doubles to use for the vocals, which are always really nice to have. Some of them I've muted and didn't end up using, but a lot of them I did use. But anyway, I've processed all the lead vocals in pretty much the same way. So I'll show you how I did that. So without the effects,
let's turn it down. I know you're a freak.
With the effects,
let's turn it down. I know you're a freak.
So first of all, I wanted his voice to sound a little deeper. That's why I added the manipulator plugin first and moved the pitch and formant down 1 semitone. After that, I'm adding this de-esser.
Let's turn it down. I know you're a freak.
Then I'm adding some compression after that with the Waves R compressor that sounds really good on vocals.
Let's turn it down. I know you're a freak.
Then I have some EQ on there. So let's do a before and after with the EQ.
Let's turn it down. I know you're a freak. Bring that body close to me.
Then after the EQ, before I'm sending it to my reverb and delay buses, I'm adding the CLA vocals plugin. So what I'm doing with this is just adding a nice tight room reverb and a little bit of high end.
Let's turn it down. I know you're a freak. Bring that body close to me.
I like using this nice tight room reverb before I send it to a bigger reverb. It just puts it in a nice space in the mix. So in the buses down here, I'm sending it to my main reverb bus right here with this Valhalla Vintage verb.
Let's turn it down.
Then I have my delay down here, this Echo Boy Jr.
Let's turn it down. I know you're a freak.
And then every once in a while, I automate this other reverb on there that's super long. So it's this reverb that has like a 4-second decay time, and I just automate it at the end of some phrases.
Close to me. Don't make a sound.
It just fills out the spaces in between the phrases really nicely. So all the vocals are pretty much processed like that in this whole project, but some of the background vocals are processed a little bit different. So I'll go to the chorus doubles down here and show you how I processed those. So here's what they sound like, those doubles.
I'll lay it down. I'll lay it down. I'll lay it down.
So it's pretty much the same processing I just showed you, plus a couple more things. So usually I make the de-essing more intense on background vocals because you don't want to hear the S's from background vocals when you're already hearing the S's from the lead vocal. To make them sound a little dirtier and more distorted, I added this Waves tape distortion plugin.
I'll lay it down. I'll lay it down. I'll lay it down.
And then to really widen up the background vocals, I use the Sound Toys Micro Shift plugin.
I'll lay it down. I'll lay it down. I'll lay it down.
And then I like to keep my background vocals really dry, so there's no delay or anything on there, just a little bit of that original reverb that I showed you.
Down. I'll lay it down.
At this point, I think I've showed you guys everything there is to know about this track, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you want to stream it, go check it out on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever you use. And other than that, I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Down, down.